Two-Ton Nerds. As always, my name is Max James. It's day 10 of the 31 Days of Fright horror movie project, year 2. Yesterday I watched Resident Evil Apocalypse, and tonight I'm just moving on down the film franchise list, and tonight I am watching Resident Evil Extinction. I have a lot to say about this movie, so I'm going to jump right into watching it. And as always, I'll be right back in a few seconds to tell you what you need to know about this movie. I watched Resident Evil Extinction. I have a lot to say about this movie, so I'm going to jump right in to the categories to tell you what you need to know about this movie. And first up is the story. The story of this movie is just great. I mean, it takes what Resident Evil Apocalypse failed on and raised the bar tenfold, and it was a great plot. It opens up with a very, very familiar opening. It's basically a shot for shot of Resident Evil with Alice waking up in the shower and not knowing where she's at, and it's just really great. But there's a few subtle differences. When she opens the door to go outside, it's the room full of lasers, and so she has to fight her way through that. Then when she fights her way into this very, very sterile, hospital-esque room, hallway, and there's booby traps, and she ultimately fails and gets cut in half by a machine gun, and it's really cool. And then it reveals, like, take a sample of her blood and throw her with the rest. And like, the rest? So it's like, it cuts to outside, it's desert, and these two chairs just kind of like fold apart, and reveals that they're back underground, and these two hazmat suit umbrella operatives kind of like throw in this big old ditch, and it reveals that this isn't the first Alice clones, and just a big long ditch of just failed Alice clones. And it was a really cool sequence, and it pans out to zombie. They're out in the middle of the desert, and like just a big old cage fence keeping them out, and it's just really awesome. And then it kind of cuts to this little intro of Alice talking. It's like how the T-virus has just not affected dead flesh, and has also affected the ecosystem, basically, in the world. Like, lakes have dried up, rainforests has turned to desert, and it's just kind of like whatever could go wrong went wrong because of this virus. And it has two different kind of plot lines. You got your band of survivors led by our new character from the game, Claire Redfield, played by Ali Larter, and her band of survivors, which reveal that Carlos Oliveira, he's back in there, played by Ode Fair, and Mike Epps as LJ. They're running their respective vehicle, and it's just really cool because they're all back. And then you got Alice, and what she's doing, she's trying to stay off the radar, the umbrella radar, and why just kind of, as well as surviving herself. And she runs into a couple of cool sequences herself. She runs into like a bunch of scavenging band of survivors, where it's like they lure her in and they just feed her take what she has and feed her to the dogs that make an appearance again. And that's really cool. And the dogs are becoming more and more less dog-like, and they're becoming more just monsters, and it's really great. And she fights her way out, like how cool she is, and makes off to another point in the desert, little gas station on the side of the road, and she finds a book with logs in it describing this place called Arcadia. It's in Alaska, and it's like no infection there, isolated, and it kind of gives a sense of hope, and like maybe this is the place where we should all be going. And she's just still traveling on through the desert, and she has this peak of her telekinesis power that kind of shows at the beginning of the end of Apocalypse, and kind of spikes on the umbrella radar, and it's like, oh hey, this might be the Alice that we're looking for. And so and they start paying attention to what's going on, and then it peaks again when our band of survivors, led by Claire Redfield, waking up to be surrounded by one of the new creatures of the movie, the crows, and the ravens, and I think they're crows, I do believe, and it's just awesome. It's just an awesome sequence, and the crows are ultimately going to kill them all. But Alice comes in and saves them all, and it's just a great sequence because she just basically just burns them all alive because of one dude decides to get on a flamethrower turret and just starts spraying the crows, and it doesn't work, and he ultimately dies, and this thing goes haywire and loose, and no one manning the controls, and it's about to kill Carlos and this little girl, and it just she saves the day, kills them all, and then she passes out, and that's where she joins the group of Claire Redfield's band of survivors, and she's like asking why Carlos asks why you didn't stay with us, and she's like has to stay off the grid, and it's just better for everybody that I don't stick around, and that's where she's like, hey, I found this book, Arcadia. We need to go there, and they're like, okay, we need to refuel and resupply because they're bone dry on everything. So, and the only place they have to go is Las Vegas because they stay away from the big cities, and it just, and that sequence is really good too because they're confronted by a new, better version of the zombie virus, and they're more intelligible, and they're faster, and when you get bit, they're more, what you can call it, when their virus mutated their virus, and makes them more contagious, and the after effects very unstable, and not quite sure what, because I'll get into that in a second, and just kills a bunch even more off the group, and Alice realizes that Umbrella is behind all this. They have found her, and they take off in a helicopter, but one of the key scientists gets bit by one of the newly injected zombies, and realize that it's kind of very Nemesis-like, like in the first movie. It's just spreading too fast, and he ends up turning into the creature I've been waiting for, the Tyrant. The Tyrant makes an appearance, and Alice and him have a big old battle, and the rest of the group kind of flies off in the helicopter towards Arcadia, and that's how the movie ends. And how this movie ends is this is a spoiler. She comes across a clone of Alice's, and I don't like the ending to this movie because it kind of destroys her being the only one kind of thing. Like, I know, it's like I want to have a very Highlander-esque, it's like there can only be one, and that's kind of how I want Alice in it. And I'll get into that in the next movie I'll be watching tomorrow, Resident Evil Afterlife. But anyways, cast. Mila Jovovich returns as Alice. You got Old Fair as Carlos. Mike Epps returning as LJ, and you got Ellie Lauder making her debut as Claire, and just kind of like, oh, it's awesome. And still no Leon. That's who we've been waiting on. We don't see him for a couple movies, so I'll get into that when it gets there. And a few characters that should have been early on is still not in it. So, anyways, the visuals of this movie is great. Like, the husk, dried skin of the zombies look awesome. I love the look of the zombies in this movie. It's probably my favorite look of the zombies, just because I like how cracked the heat has made the skin, and they're just very dried out, and they're just dirty and just dusty, and I love the look on them. The look of the Tyrant was awesome. He had a very big makeup on, and it looked really, really great. Then the crow sequence, the CGI for those, there's a few scenes especially when they're holding up the glass trying to protect themselves. The glass looks fake, not the crows. I mean, just here and there, sequences of CGI doesn't quite hold up or could have been done better. But other than that, the visuals were great. Even the look of the desert and how it looked on the film, it looked amazing. That's why I like this one, like next to the first one, is because of just how well it looked. I really loved the look of this movie. It looked dusty and bright. Most of this movie takes place during the daytime, and I was like, yeah, I mean, like, that's nice to see a zombie movie taking place during the day, because you actually get to see all the crevices on the zombie, and just to get a better look of them all. And this has a nice soundtrack too. That Inagata-Davida playing in the background by Iron Butterfly. That's just a cool soundtrack. So, and that sequence is pretty cool. Which leads me to my classification scale. I got 1 through 5. 1 being run-of-the-mill horror. 2, more best watch with the group. 3, more than average horror, but adds nothing to the horror genre. 4, helps move the horror genre forward. And 5, being a horror classic. And Resident Evil Extinction has vastly improved of what Apocalypse failed on, and it was the plot. So, but it is a 3. It has nothing new to the zombie genre, but it does add. It is more than average due to like how well it looked, the acting, the plot. I mean, even though it's still surviving and getting from point A to B, kind of surviving elements, but it's done really well. It flowed very well, and this movie didn't seem like it was as long as it did. It was only like an hour and a half, but it felt it was just well paced, and it was just really great about it. And that's really all I gotta say. And I have a lot to say, even more for the next couple days, because I will be doing the rest of the movies. So my name is Max James, and I'm going to go geek out.